Hi guys, Vahe here. Thank you for joining me for episode number 5. Today I'm actually traveling, so this is a pre-recorded. I'm actually going to Armenia, where I was born, and they're having a watercolor festival. So I'm going to be there until October 1st, and I'll show you guys what we've been up to on Instagram if you guys want to follow me there. But I thought today I'll take the day and do some basics for watercolor, which is very helpful for anybody who's starting out. So I'm going to cover as much as I can in an hour time that I have. And I thought this would be a good time to do it since it's a pre-recording. So I'm going to start off by introducing you guys to my colors that I use. So I use Rockwell watercolors. And everything I'm talking about, I'm going to have a link on Boomrock, which you could download everything. So after this, you could go there and download everything if you want to. But these are my main colors that I use. And if you go on Rockwell's site, you could use code VAHE, you get 10% off. First I have, it's a Payne's Gray. When I do my tonal studies, I use this one. And then we have a yellow. We have a lemon yellow. And then we have this permanent deep yellow. And I have raw sienna. I have a transparent orange. Okay, hold on. Transparent orange. I have Chinese red, which is here. Alizarin crimson. Raw sienna. Burnt umber. And over here I have cobalt turquoise. And my two blues are cobalt blue and ultramarine blue. Okay, the reason I'm going over these colors is because this color set is enough to do a lot of paintings. You don't need too many colors. You could use these colors and mix pretty much any color you want. Sometimes I use other colors, but today I'm just going to be covering these, and we're going to do some simple exercises. Secondly, I'm going to talk about the paper. So Rockwell has 3 different kind of watercolor paper. They have hot press, which is very soft. They have cold press, and they have rough press. I usually like to use the rough press, but all 3 are fine. They're all good papers. I use the tape to tape my paper on the board. The reason for this is because if you move the board, you could move the water on the paper with gravity, which way you want to go. So, or you could use pads, which they sell pads, Rockwell pads, and after you're done, you just put an X-Acto knife here and you take it off. So either do this or use pads, I recommend. For brushes, I use different kind of brushes. I use Escada brushes and I use some square brushes. I like to try a lot of different kind of brushes. So I'm not particularly picky. Rockwell has a lot of good brushes. Here they have these rough brushes you can use for different stuff. So right now I'm just going to show you a few different exercises that you could practice at home. One of the most important things in watercolor is how to do a gradient. I'm just going to use one color and I'm going to go do a gradient on this side, even gradient, and then I'm going to use 2 colors and do a gradient on this other side. The reason for this exercise is most of the paintings that I start out with has a gradient in them, so you want to learn how to do a gradient without messing it up. And in watercolors it's very easy to mess up because just a few dots of water is going to hit the paper. It's just going to mess everything up, so you got to be very careful. So on this one here, I'm going to take one of these fat brushes And let's say we're just gonna do one color. This one is the transparent permanent deep yellow, sorry. So you can see my palette here. So I take water, you can't see it here, but I have a pot of water that I keep on the side here. And we keep paper towels on the side. I usually put one on the right, one on the left. Just when I get too much water on the brush, I could easily just rub it against the paper towel and that takes it away. I get my brush pretty wet. See if you can see it. There we go. So I get my brush pretty wet and I put the water on my palette here. So I have it at this milky consistency here before I put it on. So what you want to do is you want to start from the top and you want your board angled. Maybe this is angled too much up. I'm going to take it down a little bit. So this should be around, I don't know, 60 degrees. So what you want to do is, when you're doing a gradient, you want to start from the top. You want to start from the top and it's going to go down by itself because you have it angled. And this is called the bead. It's a watercolor term. So if I start from the top and go horizontally, the water is going to come sit at the edge. And you want to keep doing this from top down until you go all the way down. When you leave it alone, the water is going to come down to here. So this is a nice way of getting a nice even gradient all the way down. So we're going to go horizontally. We're going to get more paint. There. We're going to take this bead all the way down to the edge. Okay, there. When you get down to the edge of the paper, you always want to clean this part up with the paper towel. The reason being, if you don't clean it up, the water on the bottom is going to sit here and it's going to go up and it's going to leave some marks on the paper. So just clean it up and let it dry. You could use a hair dryer to dry it, but when I'm doing a nice painting and it's not an exercise, I like to let it dry by itself. But just a regular hair dryer, any hair dryer, you just turn it on and don't hold it too close. When you turn it on, hold it a little bit at this distance. You want to hold it at this distance, not too close to hair dryer. But I'm going to let this dry by itself and we're going to do another exercise on the other side. So you see how it's sitting there? You got to be careful. You got to take a dry brush and take that part out. So on this side, I'm going to use two colors to do another gradient from dark to light. So I have my orange already here, so I'm going to keep the orange. And maybe I'll use just another brush. We'll use the Chinese red on this side. I'll do the same thing here. I'm gonna wet my brush. I'm gonna put the paint pretty milky on my palette here. All right. So when I have this consistency of a milky consistency, I'm gonna start from the top. We're gonna go horizontally again. You want to go over the top one more time because what happens is the paint starts running down is you're gonna get a lighter shade on the top. So you go one more on the top and then you go down. So let's say we're on like all the way here, and I want to change colors. So I'm going to mix on the paper itself. So I would take it, I will mix the middle part, right? And then I would take it and keep going down, right and left, until you go all the way to the edge there. So what happens now is just it's, you know, you have gravity controlling the water flow. So it's going to give you a nice even gradient. So this is something any beginner should practice at home. Get a board, tape some paper on there, or use a pad, and try getting really nice gradients with 2 colors, 3 colors. There. So same thing here. I clean the bottom, and I'm going to take a dry brush just to get rid of the water that's sitting on just the tip of my brush there. Okay. There you go. So this is how you do a nice even gradient with watercolors. And you want to work with another thing I'm going to mention. You want to work with as much transparent colors as possible. On this sheet that you get, the ones that are half right on top in the square, they're semi-transparent, meaning if your colors are transparent, you could put layers over it, and it just kind of gradually becomes nicer, becomes darker. Semi-transparent, it's already has like, I call it half acrylic, half watercolor. It's already a little bit opaque. It's not, so it's hard to do too many washes with it. It gets dirty really fast. So if you're gonna do a lot of washes, I recommend just using transparent colors. My semi-transparents are these 5 here, but all these, the yellows and the Chinese red, it's all transparent colors, so they're good to do washes, just like these. So I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna put myself on mute for a few seconds so I could blow dry this really fast. And then I'm gonna come back and paint some stuff on top of it. So bear with me guys for a few minutes. Okay, so I dried it with my hair dryer, blowing hot air and not holding it too close. And I always go back with my finger and make sure the tape is nice and stuck on here and it's not pulling out. So it's good to go over the tape after you blow dry it. So the way you know it's dry, if you put your hand on it, you can feel it dry. I didn't go all the way. You still could use a little bit drying, but it's okay. I'm gonna paint on top of it. So I want to paint some trees on top of it as a shape. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix a green. I'm gonna show you guys something. I'm going to use two brushes here, a big one and a small one. So, and I'm going to mix, I have my cobalt blue here. Okay, I'm going to mix a little bit of cobalt blue on the side here with the permanent deep yellow. So if I wanted to do a tree here, right, actually I like using these Chinese calligraphy brushes for trees that give it a nice texture. Maybe I'll use that instead. So if I do a shape, I could mix colors on the paper. See how it's I have a little bit of yellow. Oops. So I have a little bit of keeping a little bit of the yellow and then some blue. So you could open up your brush like this too at an angle and dab it a little bit. And if this area is wet, it's just gonna mix by itself. The paint is gonna mix by itself, but when it's dry, you can't do that anymore. So you gotta work fast. And I'm gonna keep it as a, one shape, let's say. You see how it's all mixing in one shape, and that's the real beautiful with watercolors. How you could keep one wash and use the water and make these beautiful shapes. And when it dries, it just dries very beautiful. So practice doing this, and you have to do it while it's wet. When it dries and you go over it, you're not gonna get the same effect. So this part is already drying on top, and this part is still wet, so I can mess with it. I'm gonna add some ultramarine on the bottom, just because trees get darker on the bottom because there's no sun hitting it. And we're going to take this color into the stem. I have it a little bit too angled here, but I want you guys to see this, how this works. You should have it a little bit more like a 60 degree. This is like 75 degrees angled. There. So we're gonna let this dry. We have another bush here. Maybe we could put another one here. dry yet. On this side, let's do, we could do the same thing again, but using different. Actually, I'll do like a mountain with some, maybe a river going through. We'll do something different on this side. I just want to show you guys how to work with watercolor. So if I have that color as my background, I'm just going to use ultramarine blue with the Chinese red. I'm going to make it a little bit darker. And let's say we have a mountain on the back. If I want to make this soft edge here, which I work dry, the paper is dry and I come in with a wet brush, I could take a clean brush I'm gonna take a fine brush just for fun, and I could hit the edges for it to not be hard edge. It gives it a little bit of texture. I could also do a little bit of spraying here. And we're going to take the shape down all the way. I'm just using two colors here. Just ultramarine and the Chinese red. So right now I just covered I introduced ultramarine with my yellow, with the permanent deep yellow, and some red. And let's say this is like a river. Going in the distance. So what I'm trying to say, you go down from top to bottom all the way if you want to finish it up. So then you could come back and make some other trees on top. So, and always remember, when you're working watercolors, it's always going to dry way lighter than when you first put it on. So like you can see, this one's already drying. You see how light it is? I'm just taking a wet brush and making some reflections. I dry it up a little bit on a paper towel so it's not too wet. So there, just a simple little exercise that you could try at home. You can let this naturally dry and come back with another layer on top of it, or you could blow dry it. And if you're using transparent colors, if you want to take off a certain area that you don't like, you take a paper towel, usually use a square brush, you put it on hard. See this, how I use a line, it takes the paint out. So you wet the brush a little bit, not too wet, you could take it off. Now let's see if this is the stem of a tree. I could come back and take it off a little bit. Take off the paint and let the bottom color shine through. And when it dries, I'll just go back with the darker shape of the tree. Of the branches. So let's say I was gonna do a big tree. I'm going to take some raw sienna with my ultramarine blue and a little bit of Chinese red. And we're going to use this fan brush. You do a tree that's on top and leaving this nice white here for the branch. It just looks nice, so it doesn't have to be dark color. So I'm going to go a little bit darker on the bottom. So let's say that's a big tree in the foreground, and we could do some tiny trees here. So this is just an exercise, guys. I'm not like really painting anything, just trying to show you how to use watercolors. So I do the branches first and then the shape of the tree. So I hope that makes sense. If you think your edges are too rough or too hard, you could take a clean brush, wet it a little bit, not too wet, and you could dab on the edges. So those edges go a little bit more soft and not as hard. You could also take a paper towel and kind of dab it. There. And yeah, so that's one way of doing trees as a whole shape. And after it dries, you could come back and work on the stems a little bit. It's still wet. I haven't dried this, but if it was too dry, I would just come back and add some more branches coming out of the tree to make it look more like a tree. Add a couple of birds. Do your shadow. So two simple exercises that you could do. So we're working on our gradient. Make sure you get a nice even gradient on one side, and then you could do it with two colors on the other side, and then start painting on top of it in shapes. It could be a flower, it could be a tree, it could be anything you want, but think of it as a whole shape and not do big shapes. So you could get the water to grate, the water to sit where you want it to go, and with a few different colors make it a shape. So I'm going to show this to you more closer up so you can see a little bit better. After it's dry, you could take the tape off. So do you see how it's like one shape, but it has a few different colors in there? So this is a really nice exercise to keep practicing how to do, because if you're doing a complex painting, this is pretty much what you're doing, but in smaller formats. So practice your gradients and practice your big shapes. Okay, so that's it for this exercise. So one other thing that I wanted to cover, I do a lot of value studies. I'm going to use a pad on this one. So I do a lot of value studies, and I wanted you guys to know on my other videos, when you see me doing a value study, what paint I use. So I use the Payne's Gray. I use this one here. It's just a Payne's Gray. Every other brand has it too. It's not a secret formula. Just a regular gray. So let's say, and I use a lead pencil to draw. I don't want to sharpen all the time, so this is a 0.07 lead. Let's say I'm going to draw a flower or a sunflower. I always, if you've seen my other episodes, I like to do a value study or a color study before I start a painting. It's very important to know your values so your paintings will work. So what I do is I just use this paint, and I draw it quickly, and I think about my values, my foreground, my background, and my middle ground. In anything you do, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's a flower scene or a complicated Venetian scene, anything that you do. So one other practice that you could do at home is take your brush again. Let me see what I'm doing. Take one of these are Escoda brushes. I think this is a number 18. I'm gonna try to find the smaller one. I think it fell somewhere. So yeah, take this, same thing, wet it, and think about your values. So let's say if this is a sunflower, what I usually would do is I would paint the background as one shape. So go over don't cover the flower, but just cover the background as one shape, and see if you could get a nice gradient doing that. So you could start from the top and do horizontal, right and left, and then break into your flower, let's say. Then you leave that to dry, and then you could come back and work on the flower. But you know that the dark is going to be our background. and the flower is going to be in the foreground. But this way you're differentiating where your background is and where your element of foreground is. So it's going to stick out when you finish your painting. It's going to be very obvious where's the background and what's the foreground element. So I have a little bit of I think a little bit of red mixed into my Payne's gray here, so which is okay. I didn't clean my palette. So make sure to clean your palette if you want the color. If you want the exact color for this exercise, it doesn't matter. It actually looks better with some red in it. I just left three flowers here. You know, you don't have to cover it. So this way, you know where your background is. You know where your. So this is a good exercise to do, to leave your negative space. And then after it's dry, you could come back and work on the white part. So if I want to get the stems while it's wet, you could take off some paint if you want to. So I just wanted you guys to see like how you could go over a shape with the gradient, and then after it's dry, you could come back and work on your. See, this is not dry yet, so it's gonna. I'm gonna mess it up if I keep doing this, but I will let it dry first before starting to work on the inside, the flower. So blow dry it and start it, and then you can work on it, but still keep it light. The flower needs to be light so it comes back, comes forward. But you do it as you do it more lighter than the background, so it reads as a different element, different shape. So there. And another way of using a brush is you could dry brush it, meaning that when you take a brush and doesn't have too much water on it, and what I do is over here on my palette, it doesn't have as much water as this first brush did, so it's just a little bit of water, and I could use a napkin on the side and get the water out, and then you just, if you do nice, you could do nice brush marks. You could see how it's leaving a nice dry mark effect. So this is a nice brush strokes that you could do. Let's say there's some leaves in the foreground. Then you could work on your flower in the back. So the point of these three exercises is to do a nice gradient, flat, two-color gradient and try to leave some shapes in the foreground, go darker in the background, and then come back. You can work on those elements and still leave the white, because the white is our you don't use white in watercolor. You could use like a gouache at the end, just do some very tiny marks as highlights, but you usually don't use any white, so you leave your paper white. Another thing you could do is actually take a blade, any kind of a blade, and you could, if you scratch it while it's wet, you'll leave some scratch marks, which is kind of cool. I do this on different occasions wherever I see fit. It just takes the paper out. It takes the paint out and it leaves the white paper on the bottom. See? Or you could use just any white. That's gouache. It could be Rockwell has white too. You could use their white. What I do is I just take like a Chinese calligraphy brushes. They're very thin. And get your white on there. And you could just do dry brushing on there with the white. Which gives a cool effect. But just be careful not to overdo it, because this is not acrylic painting, it's a watercolor painting. So if you are going to use white, just hit a few marks, don't overdo it. Like, let's say if I was going to do it on this painting here, and I just wanted some highlights. Just a couple tiny marks where you want your eye to go. You don't want it all over the place. It's not a Christmas tree. So this one's almost dry. Let me show you up close so you can see the texturing. And I think both of these were on cold press paper. Now you should use all three and see which one you like. I prefer the rough and the cold. So we got a nice depth here from the mountains in the background, coming forward with the river going through, and some dark trees in the background, and I put this a little bit back in the distance. You know, this is just an exercise just to show you how to use watercolors. So again, and this one's completely dry. So it's more, I wanted you guys to practice the gradients, because every painting, no matter how complex, starts out with a gradient. And if you don't know how to do a gradient, you're not gonna have a successful painting. I'll do one more gradient before we go. And I'm gonna do with three colors, so you guys can practice that too. So once you're done with the pad, the easiest way to take these off is there's a small hole here on the side, and you take a blade or a credit card. You could take a blade or a credit card and just go around it, and then it'll just come off. Just be careful, you don't want to damage your paper on the bottom. So I suggest using a credit card because the blade might go through your fingers or damage the paper underneath. So you take it off and you let it dry. And I'm gonna do one more quick gradient as an exercise. And we're gonna call it a session here. So let me grab clean water really fast, because when your water is dirty, don't keep using it because this is already paint in here. So once you're starting out a fresh painting, make sure you get clean water. So I'm gonna dump this out really fast. So I dumped it out, I got clean water. Make sure you clean your palette too, because whatever you have on the bottom is gonna come out and get in your painting. So if you're doing a 3-color gradient, I would still take 3 brushes. So I'm gonna use ultramarine blue. All right, I'm gonna have it here. I'm gonna take another brush. Let's use the alizarin crimson. I have a little that left here. And for my 3rd color, I'm gonna use the raw sienna. So you just do the same thing, you just mix on the paper. The point of this exercise is to mix on the paper. So you're gonna start from the top, right? And then mix your other paint. Add a little bit more water. Your bead is going down. And you add your 3rd color. Mix in between the 2 colors about this much, going back and forth. You get more paint and you take it all the way down. So when you have a big painting, this is a small canvas, the small paper, it's gonna get harder to do because one drop of water messes up your gradients. But buy some of these sheets, these pads, and even on pads, if you're using pads, the water is gonna sit on the bottom here, you see that? Just take a paper towel across it on the bottom and it'll take that water away. So once you let this dry, you'll get a nice gradient, and it's gonna dry lighter than what it is. So I'm not gonna dry this because I think we're running out of time, but I just wanted to show you how to do gradients and going back to the basics, and how you could just use this 12 colors and you could get a lot of paintings done with just these 12 colors. You don't need that many colors. You can mix your greens with the yellows and the blues. You could get different shades of greens, and you could do a lot of different landscapes, a lot of different paintings with these 12 colors. Try to keep everything as simple as possible. I always think in doing any kind of painting, simplicity is the key, and not getting too complicated. You want to simplify as much as you can your shapes, your values, to get a nice painting. So I hope you guys enjoyed this session and you learned something about gradients and how to do nice gradients. And if I want to get one last thing before I go, if you want to get a texture on the paper, let's say what, you could take a spray bottle and spray some water on it. I'm doing it from a little bit far, so it's not too drippy. You see how nice texture you get. The water goes on there, and the bottom of the paper, which is the white, comes out. So, and then you could put it horizontally so it dries and it doesn't drip. So this is another reason to having it on pads, because the way the angle of the paper you have, that's the direction the water is going to run. So if I spray water like this and I have it like this, the water is going to go from top to bottom. If I go like this, it's going to go this way. So if I put more water on it, so now we're getting a nice texture, and then we could do a painting on top of it. You could also put some salt at this stage, and it gives it nice effects. We'll do that another class session. But I hope you guys learned a few things. Keep it simple and keep painting, guys. And I'll see you my next session, which will be on a Saturday. I'll be in Armenia, so I'm going to do a session from Armenia. So join. I don't know what I'm going to paint yet, but we'll try to make it something fun, maybe an Armenian landscape or something. So I'll see you guys soon. Thank you for joining, and you guys could go on my Gumrad page. The link is in my description, and you could download all these different JPEGs and gradients and brushes and everything else on this video to look over it again and keep practicing. Right, guys, thank you, and be safe out there. Thank you. See you guys soon. Thanks for joining. Bye.